Welcome in. We are doing a special on college basketball corruption and how that's going to affect the betting markets, and also really just kind of get up to date on what is going on in the college basketball landscape. We got Big Man on campus and Ian Cameron here. We'll get their thoughts and really their insights on what's going on, but just want to get to a kind of like overview of what we really know. Go to Big Man, go to Ian Cameron, see what their insight is, and then how we're going to go about betting on this and try to get some value going forward in college basketball. So guys, we got wiretapping, undercover agents, cash, assistant coaches, financial advisors, an Adidas executive, all going down, all really starting with a guy named Marty Blazer, who got busted by the SEC. That's the Security and Exchange Commission, not the Southeastern Conference. He got busted for securities fraud, then got to talking to get obviously a less of a sentence. And something that the report does say, he was involved for over 10 years due to paying players in college basketball. And if I'm wrong on this, Big Man, I know you know a lot about this. Just take a second to correct me when I'm done here. But I'm pretty sure this is about the overview here. So it kind of fell into the FBI's lap. The FBI was not going in to regulate college basketball, but because American universities were being kind of defrauded and money was crossing state lines, therefore the FBI becomes involved. And after that, pretty much federal crimes were committed, and I believe 10 people are now in some trouble and cannot talk to each other and going to be going after their own plea deals. So this could get even bigger, more colleges involved. But guys, I'll stop right there with the kind of the overview here and go to you, Big Man. Anything I got wrong and anything that you want to add to what I just said?
No, I don't think you got anything wrong. Marty Blazer basically is a person that was basically took an interest years ago in the movies. Back in like 2013, he wanted to start producing movies. He needed a capital to do that. So he basically bilked people and basically got money out of them to produce these movies. Didn't end up producing them. And when one client asked for his money back, basically Blazer took money from his account unwillingly and he didn't know about it. And basically he got jammed up by the SEC. So he went to sweeten his deal and said, basically, look, I have knowingly people involved that are in college basketball that are paying athletes to come to their schools, all sorts of things. He meets with Chuck Person. They start getting into it with recruits and things like that. And basically the big overview here is there's 4 schools directly involved with several different things. And that's the big thing here. Not all of these schools are under investigation for paying players to come there. And I'll detail what those schools are. But there's also 2 other schools involved that one has not been named, but by doing research, you can figure out who it is. Louisville is one of them, which we all know. Rick Pitino was fired. The big thing there is around Brian Bowen, one of the highest recruits in the country coming in to this basketball year. If you look at Brian Bowen's recruiting, throughout his recruitment, Louisville had not really been a big recruit. They didn't really look at him. They weren't interested in him really. He had all indications of going to Michigan State. If you research and know Brian Bowen, you would know he's from Saginaw, Michigan. He has been around Michigan State's program for years. He's friends with Draymond Green. And Drew, I told you, his high school teammate, Jaren Jackson, is going to Michigan State. And basically, they together won a national title at La Lumiere in Indiana. So it was a perfect spot for Brian Bowen to go. And all of a sudden, in June, Bowen decides he's going to Louisville out of the blue. And that, for me, raised a red flag. I thought to myself, Louisville, that wasn't even in his top 5 schools. Where did they come from? So that's kind of the center around Louisville. But we'll get into the rest. And I think this really sets up for certain betting futures and what you're looking at. We're about a month, Drew, from the season starting off here. Practices are opening up this week. And if you look at the odds right now, you really need to know what exactly is going on with these schools before you make rash decisions. Everyone just thinks they're paying players. It's a little different.
Okay. And Ian, do you want to say a little something before we actually get into what Big Man was talking about and using this in the betting futures market?
Well, he's talking about the teams you want to be careful of in terms of this the scandal and this news coming out that players and recruits are being paid, you want to be aware of what schools are being potentially implicated here. And obviously we know Louisville's the headliner with Rick Pitino and the AD Jurich as well out of there, announced earlier this week. But you want to pay attention to Auburn. They're mentioned. Oklahoma State is mentioned. USC is mentioned. South Carolina, there's a little bit of a mention there that they could be involved. Alabama has also been hinted at as maybe someone involved. So there's a bunch of schools here that have been named as potentially linked to this pay-for-play scandal. So right away, what does that tell me, Drew and Big Man? It tells me I'd be leery about looking at these teams, certainly from a futures board perspective right now. Approximately, what are we? About a month away from the college basketball season starting. I would be very, very hesitant until we hear more information, until more, I guess, sanctions are put in against some of these programs, until we get more evidence as to what exactly went on and how steep some of these penalties will be against some of these teams. But those are the teams you want to right away be careful of in the futures board. I think going forward this season and beyond, guys, in college basketball, it kind of opens things up a little more for mid-majors and some of those squads that maybe are going to have that opportunity to take advantage of schools that are going to have decommits. We already see 2 guys from Louisville that have decommitted. You know, we talk about Bowen already now suspended by the Louisville team as well, based on all of the evidence that has just come out. So they are already just one major program, and there's going to be more to follow, taking huge hits in recruiting, scholarships. Where are these players actually going to suit up? That's a big concern, and it's going to open the door for some other teams, specifically mid-majors that are not linked to anything like this, to maybe have a better chance to compete this season in college basketball.
I think it's definitely leveling the playing field, but I think also what it's going to do is for Kentucky and Duke to swoop in and say, you know what, we're just going to get stronger here, because you start out with Auburn, Drew, here, your alma mater, the school you went to. Lamont Evans was at South Carolina before he went to Auburn. The concerns I have on where did this all start? Was it when Lamont Evans was at South Carolina for most of the time, or was it involved when he was at Auburn? You look at commits, they're already leaving Auburn. E.J. Montgomery, the 17th best player in next year's class, is already decommitted from Auburn. He's leaving. And what makes Auburn an interesting caveat in this is Bruce Pearl's past. The question is he involved here is the big thing around college basketball. Bruce Pearl has been no stranger to controversy, not only at Auburn, but at Tennessee. You look at some of the things he did with Aaron Kraft, too. We can all agree the Aaron Kraft cookout meeting wasn't that big a deal, but he lied and said that they weren't there, and he told the family to lie and say they weren't there. And you also wonder, what's his connection here as well? Because back in the early 2000s, he had a big problem with a recruit where he called them illegally and recorded it and tried to get him to say that he was receiving gifts and stuff. So it's a weird situation with Auburn. I'm one to think that with Auburn, there's more to the story here. I mentioned to you, Drew, one of their great players last year, Mustafa Heron, went to Auburn out of nowhere. He's from Connecticut. I thought UConn was a great fit for him. If you look at the success Kevin Ollie's had there with Napier and with Boatwright, and even back to Kemba Walker, it seemed like a great spot. But for me, it concerns me on what Bruce Pearl's role in all this is. Is Frank Martin involved? Frank Martin's a pretty honest guy from the looks of things, but with Auburn right now, with the level that they'd never get recruits like this, Drew. You know that on a basketball side, they don't get recruits like this. This is concerning to me if I'm Auburn.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point when you bring up Auburn, because it's all about hoping that these players make it to the NBA, and then you would get kind of almost like angel investing in Silicon Valley. You throw a bunch of money at 100 companies, and 1 or 2 of them go Facebook or Instagram like that, and then you make a lot of money. It's kind of the same thing here with these high school players becoming college and then hoping they make the NBA, so then you get a return on your investment. And my first thought is Auburn doesn't even have – I can't remember the last NBA player Auburn had. So that's why that one struck me as weird. And then you bring in the financial advisor aspect, and it gets even fishier.
And Drew, also I want to make this clear. With Auburn – what Lamont Evans did is he didn't pay recruits to come to Auburn. He was basically accused of offering bribes and getting bribes from sports agents to steer them towards particular sports agents. And what's so damning about this sports agent involved, Christian Dawkins, if any of these coaches or anyone involved would have just did a simple Google search, they would have found that Christian Dawkins was arrested. They'd have found that Christian Dawkins was no good, and they would have found that Christian Dawkins was arrested for using credit cards that weren't his to rack up thousands of dollars in charges. And for me, Lamont Evans, you got to ask yourself why on earth he was doing this. He was making over $600,000 at all these different schools. It doesn't make any sense to take. What is $22,000 if you're making $600K a salary? What kind of sense does that make? And Drew, what I also am concerned about here is you look at Arizona's involvement here. There's been talk that Arizona's violated several rules by having Christian Dawkins at their basketball practices. This is a sports agent. If you read the NCAA rules, it highly discusses sports agents, financial investors should be nowhere near practice. And I have to ask myself, why was he at practice? Sean Miller should be held accountable for that. And it also worries me that there may have been federal agents undercover in Arizona's basketball practices. This is not good if you're Sean Miller. There's also said to be one current Arizona roster player that's received over $100,000. For me on who I think that is, I think I know who it is. I'm not going to make the comment who I think it is, but there's a lot of problems with Arizona, and with the future odds, Ian will agree. Arizona, to me, is a Final Four caliber team this year. They have a very good team coming up. This could really present a ton of problems for Sean Miller and this staff.
Yeah, and they're 9-1 right now, Arizona. Just look at some of the programs, the heavy hitters that are involved in these implications. Arizona's right up there. We talk about Louisville. We've already seen them fall to 16, 17 to 1 range a little bit since this news came out. I mean, it's going to affect everyone here on the futures board. And you talk about the situation with Arizona. That's a prominent program. Sean Miller has done remarkable work with this Wildcats program. And to see this happening involving the assistant, Emmanuel Richardson, it is just an absolute blow to the Arizona Wildcats and their ability to remain, one of the elites and one of the contenders in college basketball moving forward. Of course, he's accepted bribes from the aforementioned, as Big Man pointed out, Christian Dawkins, did Emmanuel Richardson. So this is a massive, massive issue right now. And it's, again, a bunch of prominent programs involved and their ability now. And we've already talked about the Louisville situation, guys. Anthony Simons and Courtney Ramey decommitting already from Louisville. These are two of highly regarded, talked about, highly touted prospects that were expected to make an impact here for Louisville basketball. Now that's no longer going to be the case. They're out of there. They want no part.
And how will this affect
this in any way?
And how will this affect current people on the roster? If I'm a current player, I'm looking to transfer at this point. The big thing, Drew, here is sifting through what exactly may affect the program. Arizona's got a double kick here because not only were they accepting bribes, but they also have current players on the team that have accepted payments to play at Arizona. According to the NCAA, that's not only as far as that will make them ineligible, but second of all, they could be facing criminal charges for being involved with a federal case here and taking money. If it's found that Brian Bowen or any of these players willingly accepted money from these people, they could be subject to criminal charges. They'll definitely have to pay the money back. So if you're Brian Bowen and you're some of these kids, and you know what the shame in all this is? The shame in all this is going to affect young men's basketball careers forever, particularly Brian Bowen. Brian Bowen is seemingly, from what I've seen, a good kid. He comes across as a nice person, a kid that really just loves the sport of basketball. He's from Saginaw. He grew up around this program. And what's so sad is, Drew, going forward, if he would have just made one decision like this, he would have been at Michigan State this year, possibly playing for a Final Four with friends of his from high school, with a Hall of Fame coach in Tom Izzo, and really his ticket to the NBA was right there for the taking. And that's the shameful thing out of all this. And that's where, for me, it's concerning because I love this game. I love basketball. But we all know, whether you're into recruiting or not, if you go to a college basketball game, there are slime balls everywhere. And that's the big thing. But you really have to sift through. We talked about Arizona and Auburn, and Ian, I'm sure, will mention this. Arizona has a double kick. Auburn has – I'm not sure it's going to affect this team, but what it will affect our future commits. And what's Bruce Pearl's future? I mean, this isn't the first time Bruce has been involved as well as Rick Pitino. Louisville's going to have a big problem. They may have a death penalty kind of thing here coming up. They're the one group that I think will be looking at that. As far as, Ian, I'm sure we'll get into USC. I think it's from a future standpoint, they're most likely, I think, to come out of this scot-free. I don't know if they'll come out scot-free. The concern you have there is, will they just impose sanctions on themselves? They have a really good basketball team coming in as well, a top 10 caliber program, Charles O'Banion, all sorts of great players. And the big surprise to me in all this was Tony Bland being arrested. If you know Tony Bland and you know the kind of recruiter he is, everyone in the state of California knows Tony Bland. He's possibly the best recruiter in the country, one of the best recruiters in the country from an assistant coach perspective. Everyone knows him. He didn't have to do this stuff. Recruits just come to him. They love the guy. He's the person that you want to be cool with, you want to know. And that's what surprised me. But the current roster, I don't think Andy Enfield really knew much about this. Bland doesn't need Enfield on his heels to get recruits. Bland just gets them to come to him.
Hey, big man, no, that was a good breakdown, but I know you know a lot about each individual school's case, and they're not all the same. So let's take a minute or two and run down each school, at least the big name schools. We got Oklahoma State, Arizona, Auburn, USC, Miami, and Louisville. Do you mind taking a minute and just kind of saying the difference in the actual what each school is going through right now?
Yeah, Oklahoma State basically, I think they're the school that you'll find won't have much going here. Lamont Evans came to Oklahoma State. He's been arrested for taking bribes to steer recruits or players towards certain sports agents. It's unclear how much of that was done at Oklahoma State. Again, they may take a look at the school, but I think overall, I think they're going to come out okay from all this. The question is, what will the NCAA do? Because they've pretty much been numb on all this, and you got to ask, where have they been with all this? But Oklahoma State is basically getting involved with this because of Lamont Evans and him coming over from South Carolina. Auburn, same situation there. Chuck Person basically befriended some of these guys and basically was taking bribes to do the same thing, basically send players to that person. A lot of this, I feel like, is strictly with Chuck Person and with Lamont Evans. I don't believe, and I really believe this.
Oh, his name's all over that report, Person, for sure, 100%.
Yeah. And he's definitely one of the big parts of this. But I really believe, I don't think Bruce Pearl's involved here. I really don't. I think Bruce Pearl is, at this point, doing whatever he can to keep his nose clean. And if you look back and really know what went on with Bruce Pearl, none of it was involved where he gave recruits stuff they shouldn't have or anything. It was just him trying to get a leg up and invite kids to his house for cookouts and things like that. None of it was regrettably terrible. I don't think Bruce Pearl was involved. I really don't. As far as USC, another situation here where they're basically taking kickbacks. Tony Bland's taking bribes to steer people his way. And out there in California, you got a lot of good basketball players. The problem with USC is they've been involved with some sanctions as well. If you remember, with Reggie Bush and O.J. Mayo, the good thing for them is those sanctions have passed, and that won't hit them with a death penalty here. Louisville and Miami, they're the problems, and Arizona. All of those schools have been involved in possibly implications of paying players to come to their schools, i.e. preferably Brian Bowen to Louisville, Nasir Little to Miami, who, if you read, Nasir Little's a 2018 recruit that was basically belonged to an AAU team called One Family in South Florida. Augustine, who runs it, basically was involved in this as well, where he was funneling players to these shoe companies and to these schools for kickbacks and things like that. Many of the recruits on his team have been involved here. Arizona, they have a little bit of a double whammy. Coach Richardson was taking bribes, and also it's possible, and it's been proven that there is someone currently on Arizona's roster that has been paid. My concern here, it's either DeAndre Ayton or Brandon Randolph. DeAndre Ayton is the #1 recruit in the country other than Michael Porter. Ayton is a big, tall, huge kid. He's a center, a 7-footer. It was concerning on he was supposed to go play in Europe. That was the big thing that he was supposed to do. All of a sudden, though, he goes to Arizona. I don't know who it is. There is someone, though, on Arizona's basketball team that was paid. And you also have to ask yourself, was Sean Miller knowingly having agents at his practice? That's a pure rule violation, and that will be dealt with by the NCAA.
Okay, good breakdown there, big man. And guys, let's get into, as far as betting this, is there an advantage going into the futures market? I don't believe we have any lines out. We're about a month away from college basketball tipping off. But what about in futures? Maybe betting against USC in the Pac-12, or I don't know, maybe anything else.
Really depends on how exactly each program is implicated. Right now, we know Louisville's going to really feel the brunt of it. We don't know just how much, though, with an Oklahoma State yet. We don't know just how much yet with a USC and some of these other programs involved. It's ironic that Bowen goes to Louisville. Keep in mind, Louisville was not on Bowen's radar screen or map at any point. And then all of a sudden, $100,000 apparently bribed toward him to get him to Louisville, and all of a sudden he recruits there. How odd is it that it looked like he would be hurting Michigan State, turning them down, going to Louisville? Now this comes out, Michigan State's actually going to be helped, and Michigan State's going to have a pretty good basketball team this season without a doubt. Just an absolute shame. As Big Man said, and you talk about Bowen here, a 5-star freshman coming in who was expected to make this big impact, have this great season here with Louisville Cardinals. It's all for naught now. He's been suspended by the program. Who knows if he's even going to be eligible to step on a college basketball court this season?
No way.
I can't see it either. So you talk about now a young kid with all the promise and all the talent in the world that's had his collegiate career fucked up beyond belief right now because of this situation. Really is a sad thing to see. It truly is. And Dickie V, you know, I've had my love-hate relationship with the guy over the years. He can get on your nerves. I understand that. But you heard the raw, emotion and passion that he had in his comments about this whole situation yesterday. He was absolutely hurt, saddened, and just absolutely crushed to the core based on all of this news coming out. Someone who bleeds blood, sweat, and tears for college basketball. Dick Vitale, love him or hate him, you can't deny that. It just tells you how this whole scandal has really cut to the core of the biggest college basketball fans out there.
So, Big Man, any way to bet this going forward?
I think with Louisville, I think it's impossible. I couldn't foresee any reason you would bet on Louisville. None. There's no future that's worth that to me. I mean, you don't know who your coach is going forward. Your recruits are leaving like crazy. They shouldn't be on anyone's list. Arizona, I wouldn't want any part of them right now. They're going to have sanctions come down. You better believe that. And Raleigh,
not at 9-1, not at 9-1 either. That's for damn sure.
And that's the shame of it all. Arizona, I really believe this was the year they were going to get to the Final Four. And now, to make matters worse, Raleigh Alkins is out 8 to 12 weeks with an injury. So it just gets worse. The teams that I'm looking at, big time, Michigan State at 6.5 to 1. I think they're going to benefit big off this. I mean, they're pretty much scot-free here. Duke, I mean, I already love Duke, but I love them even more now. Now that and they always seem to come out scot-free in these things, and they're only going to get stronger because kids like E.J. Montgomery, who aren't going to go to Auburn now, may get grabbed by Kentucky, get grabbed by Duke. And I think, Drew, the big thing you said is, who else is involved here? Because here's the problem with the 4 people arrested and the other people arrested. These are not hardened criminals. These are not mob guys. These are not murderers. These aren't guys that care about whether to rat or not. If they can stay out of prison, they're going to stay out of prison because none of these guys want to go to prison. None of them want to lose cushy lifestyles to go to prison for someone that might be higher up. Someone will flip here and someone will give out more information. Teams I'm looking at, a team like USC, I think for the most part, they're going to come out okay in this. None of the players involved are going to leave, I don't think. They already have a really good team coming in. The only concern here is, will Lynn Swann impose sanctions? I don't know how really he will, because Bland did this willingly. I don't think this had anything to do with the basketball court. Bland basically said, look, I'm going to try to get ahead here and make some money off bribes. that's the sad thing about it. And I do agree with Dick. I'm not a big Dick Vitale fan, but what he said was poignant. I mean, it's a shame that now we're finally seeing all this, and it hit us all hard. I mean, you look at what Fraschilla tweeted out. Think about Saginaw's Brian Bowen wishes he could put his head down on a pillow in a freshman dorm at Michigan State tonight, ? Life would be much simpler. And that's so true. The only people that are going to be affected by this are the kids involved. Brian Bowen, it's a possibility he may never play at a high-level basketball school again. I wouldn't want anything to do with it. Yep. He might be arrested.
Well, there's definitely some other people worrying, big man. And you brought up a good point as far as, these aren't mob guys. These are guys with six-figure jobs that have families and that are educated for the most part. They're going to do whatever they possibly can to stay out of jail.
And many of them could be fall guys, Drew. I mean, this could very well be, in the Rick Pitino case, is he directly involved with bribes? No, but in a way, it's similar to the mob. He basically doles out duties and says, you all go do this. If he was willingly on tapes and said, look, do what you got to do to get recruits because we already do that anyway, it looks bad for Rick Pitino. And Rick Pitino's legacy will be all of this. It won't be the fact that he's went to 8 Final Fours and won 2 national championships. It will be him doing all this.
I know it's terrible for Rick Pitino. It's one bad thing after another. We think about, Karen Cypher, that incident. Karen, where's the money, Karen? From
Sure.
Goodfellas, legendary scene. But, Rick Pitino going back there, that was a scandal. We talk about the prostitutes on campus for recruiting visits that Louisville dealt with. That was with Pitino there under his watch. That went on a couple of years ago, and now this comes out. So, Rick Pitino, eventually, it got to the point where if you're Louisville, and John Rothstein, who's a great college basketball guy, wrote a great article about this, it got to the point where enough was enough. We looked the other way 5 years ago with Cypher. We looked the other way a couple of years. We kept you on board. Now this is the we put our line in the sand. Enough is enough. You got to go. And Louisville made that decision to cut bait, and they have to. This program now has been completely and utterly tarnished. They have to start from square one and start to rebuild a reputation that has really been destroyed basically by this.
And the last thing I want to point out, Drew, here is it's not so much, and I see one of the chat guys is mentioning about USC's current team. USC's current team has nothing to do with whether they impose sanctions. If they impose sanctions, it doesn't matter what those kids think. They're not going to the NCAA tournament. It doesn't matter what they think. And that's this thing about this year that's concerning. You also have to look at the fact that USC is almost back to relevance again. I'm not saying they weren't relevant, but they haven't been very good on whether it's in football or basketball. They've been there, but they haven't won anything. And they're finally getting the Reggie Bush and OJ Mayo stuff away from this program. And now all of a sudden it's back again. And it's really a shame because it's a shame Bland had to do things like this because Bland's a great recruiter. He could have did this. He could have done all this without. He just had to get greedy and try to make more money on the side. But overall, the teams I'm looking at, Duke, Michigan State, a team like, could I see value for USC at 28-1? Yeah, because if they come out scot-free here, they're going to be right there. And other teams like Arizona out on the West Coast, I think they're in trouble.
Yeah, USC, I hope, doesn't get touched somehow by too many penalties or sanctions here because I like that team coming into the season. I like any team with a senior point guard. They're going to have that back this season, too, and Jordan McLaughlin. That's huge. And I remember good memories, big man, NCAA tournament last year, a couple of bets of mine on that USC team,
Sure.
And I enjoyed cashing those. And they were a team that got better and better down the stretch, surprised teams. A lot of people thought they'd be out quickly in that tournament. Got a couple wins under their belt, had a nice little run there in March last year. And if
Did you lose him, big man?
Due to this, they are still going to be a good team next year. This year coming up, I think.
Yeah, and it's crazy. And most of the USC current players were recruited by Bland. Jordan McLaughlin detailed a great recruiting trip he had with Tony Bland. They went bowling together, and they had a great time. And that's the kind of good things Tony Bland did. When he walked into a room, it was like LeVar Ball walking into him. Everyone wanted to talk to him. They wanted to be his friend. And that's the shameful thing here. There are good recruits here that just got way too greedy, unfortunately. Drew, the final thing I'll say, this is a sad, shady business. It's put a big light onto something we all know goes on. The only thing that matters, though, is the feds are involved here. Usually they're not. And we can say it happens everywhere. And you could be right, but it doesn't make it not illegal. And that's the point of this all. As kids receive cars and money and stuff? Sure they have. They got away with it. Unfortunately, Brian Bowen and kids like that just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they were used by people that should know better, and that's the sad thing in all of this that we're dealing with.
Yeah, guys, I appreciate you taking the time in doing this. We got a lot, very insightful on the background, and got a little betting advice here too. So guys, just keep in mind, we got to shut this down within 5 minutes or so. Just real quick, both of you guys, and I'll chime in as well. How does college basketball fix this going forward? Do the players need to be paid? How does the recruiting process change? In your opinion, I'll let you start it off, Ian. Just real quickly, how would you change it?
I think you've got to at least open the doors to discussion for paying the players at the collegiate level. I think you do. Really at this point in time, because it's getting to that point now where it seems players are getting more and more interested in, hey, we're going to get this kind of money to play collegiate basketball. To hell with, where I live, to hell with where I was brought up, to hell with what my favorite program is, or what coach kind of interests me and excites me in terms of I want to play for that guy. No, the money. Unfortunately, with kids that young, they're trying to build a financial future for themselves. They're going to gravitate toward the cash. They really will, over where location or coach or type of program they want to play for. So I think you're at the point now where you're going to have to at least open the doors of conversation for paying college basketball players. You didn't think this day would come, but I think you've at least got to discuss it and leave an open mind to making that happen at this point.
Yeah, and by the way, I think this opens the door heavily for UCLA at 40-1. Honestly, I think this is really good for them. I mean, Arizona and USC, they're just sitting there hanging out. But I agree with Ian. The problem is that's never going to happen. I think it's enough that they're giving scholarships, they're giving places to live, they're giving 3 meals a day, they're giving everything. They're giving every tool to make them as strong a basketball player as possible. I don't think they need to be paid. Everything's already paid for. And they're given a ticket basically to say, listen, we're going to give you whatever you want, and you can go to the NBA after to make money after it as well. I think what you should do is allow kids to go to the NBA. I don't think you should be forced to go to college. I don't think you should have to go to college to really get anywhere. And I don't want to hear about, well, you can just go to Europe. Not many kids do that. Not many kids are ready to leave this country, go to another country. Many of them are coming from broken homes, and that's the problem. A lot of these kids are shamefully underadvantaged here, and people see that. People see dollar signs in these kids that don't have father figures and say, you know what, it's like a gang. That's basically what this is. It's any gang that you're involved with. A man comes to you, someone you see on the streets is making money, they're doing big things, they come to you and say, listen, you don't have a father at home, I'll do what I can do, just help me out here. And that's exactly what these recruiters did. They're basically gang members. That's what they were. They recruited young kids, took all their basketball prowess from them, and made money off them. You have to allow kids to do what they want to do. Let them go to the NBA if they want. If they fail, it's their decision. And I'll end this by saying, when you send a kid to any college, he could either fail or he could either do good. It's on his job. It's on his shoulders. When you have a kid and you send him to college, you don't sit there every day and pat his back and tell him what to do and how to do it. Kids have to learn on their own. Kids have to make their own decisions. If they want to go to the NBA, they can. And if they fall flat in their face, they're going to. It's the willpower you have and the discipline you have as a kid to either succeed or not.
Well said, big man. I guess I would just chime in with saying I think that they should go to the Olympic model. If a kid can make money off of his own likeness, I think he should be able to. You know, Johnny Manziel, Cam Newton, those type of players are worth something. They should be paid what the free market would pay them.
True. If they don't like it, they don't have to be a part of it. Rules are rules, unfortunately. And they're already, you have to remember, their future involves a lot of money. They're told these are the rules. As long as you don't sell your merchandise or have a YouTube channel, you're getting everything for free. They're getting everything. They're given tools to become the best player they can be. What more do they need?
That's true. Whether you agree with collegiate players signing autographs or not, or being allowed to or not, if the rule is they can't do it, they can't freaking do it. That's basically all there is to it, unfortunately. But, be mad at the rule. Don't be mad at the –
Exactly. That's the point. Yeah, be mad at the rule. Be mad at the NCAA, who is the real criminal boss here. The NCAA is the real problem here. That's another discussion, and we can get into pay for play and all that sort of thing. They're the real problem here.
All right.
What I like is that we linked this scandal to the betting app from a betting perspective. We talked about how it's going to affect the futures because really, SBR, what are we about more than anything? Yeah, the scandal.
I'll tell you what, though. It's sad.
How it reacts to betting. Yeah.
It's sad for me because I truly love basketball. It's my favorite. If betting went away tomorrow, I still am in love with the game of basketball. And that's, for me, what is sad in all this.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. And thanks to SBR for letting us do this. We did tie in betting into this as good as we can. Make sure to check out the SBR odds with college basketball right around the corner. We got a huge Friday college football card and then into Saturday and Sunday NFL. So for Big Man on Campus, Ian Cameron, I'm Drew Martin. Stay tuned this weekend to SBR Picks. Got a lot of college football, just getting the page ready now, and a bunch of NFL for Sunday as well. So we got you covered for a lot of free betting advice here at SBR. Thanks for tuning in, guys.